Ali Antrazi on this
Not
one.
surprising.
No, not at all.
Unknown brewer. And this is a nice departure because between the Devotion mechanic and Mutavault getting printed, we've heard so much the format is all that matters is one color decks and two color decks trying to do Devotion stuff. And David taking a far different take on the format with a Sylvan Caryatid, Axebane Guardian, a bunch of dual lands to tie the mana together, and then playing hits like Blood Baron, Sphinx's Revelation, Angel of Serenity, Sylvan Primordial, Jace, Mortars. I mean, all the hits. And Chromatic Lantern as well, a criminally underplayed card during its standard life thus far.
That card should be better. I'm just going to say that. That card should be better. As Pazel started off here with an Elvish Mystic, he's got a Mutavault as a second land. And you see a confused kind of thinking look on his face. I think we're going to see that one a lot here as McDarby starts to unveil some of the cards that he has in his deck. He started off innocently enough with a Temple of Mystery, but we know there's a lot more coming as here's a Caryatid.
And you see, John, give pause. We don't see a lot of tropical islands in Standard. It's definitely been the least played guild, very few breeding pools, and so this start opens up, a lot of questions. And certainly the Black-White Temple to go along with it is not answering any of them just
Buckle
yet.
up. Could be anything next. The best part is I think McDarby's going to have a land and play Chromatic Lantern, and then the head is just going to explode.
Well, yeah. Well, then you just get to stop guessing because it could be anything.
Yeah, what's the worst thing that could happen to me this turn? Because that's probably what's coming. Pazel going to take a draw here. He's got plenty of mana. He's got some attackers there in Mutavault and Elvish Mystic, but he wants to get a monster on the board. That's what his deck does, and that's what he needs to do.
And the red-green monster deck is so much more powerful when it has acceleration. It's actually fairly anemic when it doesn't have a mana creature on turn 1 or turn 2, as it doesn't impact the board really on turn 3 very much either without a mana accelerant. But with the mana creatures, you get to see some really explosive openings.
Plays much too fair, as here's a Gore Clan Rampager, a Temple of Abandon, so time for a little scry action. So now he's got one monster on the board, and Pazel does have a copy of Chandra Powermaster in his hand right now as well. Mr. McDarby going to take a draw step. You see a Jace Architect of Thought? Sure, why not? Why wouldn't that be in there?
That's totally fine.
This is the Ali Antrazi School of Magic right here, my friends. There's a Temple of Deceit hanging out. There's a Sylvan Caryatid. And there is, he thinks he wants to play Temple of Deceit, but he's going to go with a Temple of Silence. See what McDarby wants to do here. The deck list, just taking a look at it, boy, is it all over the place, but it's interesting.
And that little pause from David is actually pretty telling information-wise. That he cares that much about which land got played implies that he has a lot of different colors of mana in his hand and potentially a lot of gold spells as well.
Yeah. Now, we're going to see a little bestow action on the Gore Clan Rampager. That's going to be an 8 for the attack. Mountain going to come into play for Pazel, going to pass the turn back. So all of a sudden, McDarby's underneath a significant amount of pressure here.
Yep.
I mean, he does have a stomping ground, though.
He does have, how many copies of Supreme Verdict in this deck? He has 1 in the main deck. And that would be a really good time for it.
Would leave behind that Boon Satyr, though, and there also is a Mutavault among the lands. So you see McDarby's at 11 right now. He's got a Blood Baron with Scope in his hand, but Blood Baron is actually not very good in this situation because that Gore Clan Rampager is an 8/6.
John also with a copy of Chandra in his hand as well to make none of no blocks.
No block skis. So what can McDarby find here to do? Again, you see a hand of Blood Baron, you see a hand of Jace, and a bevy of lands.
Blood Baron and Jace, both very good answers to a plethora of small creatures, not very good against one giant monster, which is what David is facing down right now.
Breeding Pool, going to knock McDarby down to 9, and he's going to drop the Blood Baron of a Scope and pass the turn back with a kind of fingers crossed approach.
This looks like a man who knows that this is a bleak situation.
Yes, knows that this deck can deal a lot of damage very, very quickly between Rampagers and Flesh Blood, Stormbreath Dragon coming in the air. There's a lot of things this deck can do. There's a Chandra. Gonna use the Mystic. So Chandra's elevator's likely gonna go up here. Blood Baron, you can't block. McDarby, you take 1. And the red zone is a fun place to be. So John Pazel's going to win game number 1 over David McDarby. Green Red Monsters up a game over the Brew, a 5-color ramp. McDarby's going to go to his sideboard. So Patrick, I'll let you go to it as well. Take it away.
He has an additional copy of Supreme Verdict. He has a Doom Blade that he can bring in. He has 2 copies of Abrupt Decay, which are actually not terribly good against red green monsters. He has a War Leader's Helix he can bring in. Also not very good, doesn't really kill very much stuff. A Detention Sphere, an Aetherling, 2 Blood Barons, a Vraska, 3 Thoughtseizes, a Ratchet Bomb. The problem is that a lot of these removal spells don't actually catch the cards that matter in the Red Green Monsters deck. Abrupt Decay doesn't catch any of the significant creatures, really. And Detention Sphere and War Leader's Helix can't kill Stormbreath Dragon because it's per white, and all this stuff. So I definitely think we're going to see the Doomblade in the Supreme Verdict. We also might see Detention Sphere as it's an answer to things like Pelucranos and Planeswalkers. And possibly we want the Aetherling in place of one of the other win conditions, as Aetherling's actually pretty reasonable against Red-Green once it gets online.
Yeah, it's actually quite good against them. You take a look at McDarby's sideboard here, Pazel's sideboard of 4 Shocks, a Mizium Mortars, a Rook Thar the Unbowed, 2 copies of Plummet, a Garruk Caller of Beast, 4 copies of Mistcutter Hydra, and 2 Destructive Revelry. Thinking about what McDarby showed Pazel that game, he saw Sylvan Caryatid, he saw some crazy lands, he saw a Blood Baron, and the game ended. So if you're Pazel, sideboarding here actually has to be pretty difficult because a card like Destructive Revelry is actually quite good against McDarby, but I don't know if he know to bring that in.
Yeah, and furthermore, it's another question is Rorik Thar, right? Because it's reasonable to assume David's deck has a lot of spells in it. He played a bunch of different lands, and he looked like he had some sort of control game plan. But all David actually cast that game were creatures. He just played Blood Baron and Sylvan Caryatid. So there's a big question mark about whether or not that card's actually good at all against David.
Now, one thing to keep in mind as well, guys, so depending on, well, it doesn't even really matter how this match goes because I'm sure people at home want to find out exactly what McDarby's up to. We've done a deck tech with him already in the sideboard. He sat down with Ruben Bressler to explain why he is playing Chromatic Lantern side by side with Angel, Serenity, Sylvan Primordial, and Sylvan Caryatid, whatever else is in this jam of cards. But if you guys want to find out more about that, it will be up later today for you guys on our coverage page. We'll also run it after one of our rounds, too. So you guys can check out exactly what McDarby and Ali Antrazi are up to.
To me, one of the big incentives to try to build a deck like this is Angel of Serenity. This was a dominant player in Standard a year ago.
Criminally underplayed now.
Yeah, and I know people try to make mono-white Devotion nick those decks where Angel of Serenity is the primary payout, and we have so many of the decks in the format are just these creature decks that can't really beat Angel of Serenity. It's fallen by the wayside. It's just very hard to incorporate into a deck at this point. Getting into a fast Angel of Serenity is a really good game plan against a lot of decks, including Red-Green Monsters. So if David's able to execute that part of the deck, that could be a really powerful game plan for today.
It's one of the things I generally like to do is just look at some of the powerful cards that are just not getting played in Standard. Angel Serenity just checks that box of just like a card that was just dominant in the last Standard format. Everyone hated playing against it.
Context is everything.
Yeah.
Metagames change, When the metagame is all about Thragtusk, then the next logical step is to go, Thragtusk defines the games as being pretty slow and grindy. What's the most powerful thing you can be doing in a slow and grindy game? Angel of Serenity is probably the answer to that. The metagame now is much faster, and you don't have a card like Thragtusk that can bridge you from the mid game to the late game, and so it's just harder to play a card like Angel of Serenity. It's harder to make all your land drops and defend yourself long enough to get to that stage, but David's trying to get there with a mixture of removal and a lot of mana acceleration.
We'll see if it works. It didn't work game 1.
No, that was not a good start.
No, that was not a good start. It got ran down pretty quick. Also does show the power, of course, of mana acceleration and big threats, which is a tried and true strategy in Magic.
Yeah, it's been around since basically Alpha.
Yeah. Been doing this a long time.
Yep.
Very, very long time. Kind of the, mana explosion decks that V Mousewitz likes to build of just ramping into ridiculously powerful things and hopefully killing your opponent before they can get set up.
Mana ramp and mana sinks.
Yeah.
Or mana ramp and modal spells that are good as cheap cards or expensive cards.
Kavu Titan comes to mind. I loved that card when I was a kid. I could never get him.
You never get him?
Yeah, he was like $10. That was expensive when I was young.
It was in my first PTQ winning deck.
Really? Must be nice to be rich.
Yeah. And
just have Kavu Titans.
Bunch of dual lands. Mystic Snake was like $5.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Blessed. Took a month's worth of allowance for me to get an Undermine. And then I realized I didn't even like counterspells.
Yeah.
So it's just a bad buy.
Yep.
Overgrown Tomb to start here for McDarby. Pazel's going to have an Elvish Mystic pass the turn back. Detention Sphere the draw. Sure, why not? Goes right there with Sylvan Caryatid. Now he can cast it.
Good opening for David here.
Got an Urban Evolution in the group, too.
That is a one of.
Also, has got the old Axebane Guardian, too. This deck is interesting.
I'm not sure how you confidently conclude that one copy of Urban Evolution is correct, but here we are.
Hey, if anyone knows, it's Ali Antrazi. You see, Pazel does not have red lands this game, but this kind of feels like a Boon Satyr to me.
Possibly. And it's also not uncommon for the red-green deck to be missing a color of mana.
That's true.
You know, we have a lot of basic lands of both colors.
There's an Axebane Guardian. That is no joke.
That
is a real Axebane Guardian.
And it is a combo with the Sylvan Caryatid.
Yes, it is.
As it now gets to make an additional color of mana.
First pick in Return to Ravnica Limited, depending on who you are, how you like to play Magic. Sometimes I was in the mood to ramp.
I would have never first picked that thing.
Coward. Sometimes I just want to cast a big spell.
No, it's charming. I understand the appeal. I'm not saying I don't get it.
I like it. All the colors of the rainbow, too. Stomping Ground going to come into play untapped here for Pazel. We'll see what he has to do with this newly found mana. You best believe that Boon Satyr is going to come in, but for how much?
And David's opening here is really explosive. I mean, if you're in John's position, you have to be really worried about what next turn is going to offer up.
Got 7 mana on turn 4. Presuming he plays an untapped land, he could cast an Angel of Serenity as soon as next turn. And I'll tell you one thing. This format, and we talk about green-white and green-red monsters and things of that nature, they're not particularly prepared for Angel of Serenity right now.
No.
I'll tell you that much.
It's basically Stormbreath Dragon is their way to beat that card.
Here's a Pelucranos. 3 creatures.
This would be a really good
3
turn.
creatures, a quick untap for David McDarby.
Are they all targetable? Just
They
real
are
quick check.
all targetable. But it doesn't look like he has. He's got a Temple Mystery. He's got another copy of Sylvan Caryatid in his hand. Now he's going to try to figure out how he wants to navigate this turn. Looks like we might see the Detention Sphere get cast, and also has a Jace Architect of Thought. So plenty to do for the 5-color ramp player.
And he also can play a Sylvan Caryatid this turn, which is only, in essence, only 1 mana this turn, as it adds another mana through Axebane Guardian.
So 3, 4, 5, Urban Evolution. Whoop, 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 whoop. 3. 2 copies of Axebane Guardian drawn. There's a Temple. Take a look at the top card. It's going to stay on top. Now, if you're John, you have to be terrified. What are you keeping on top of your deck?
Right.
I don't have the slightest idea.
I mean, he's going to take... David's going to take a big hit this turn. Maybe he chump blocks something with his Sylvan Caryatid. Getting out of this turn is kind of harrowing, and there's still a Mutavault in play that's threatening things and what have you, but certainly John has cause for concern.
Yeah, he could take a hop in this turn. That's for sure. You see there's 10 points of power out there just among the creatures, not even counting the Mutavault. So what is coming from the Grand Monsters player? This is kind of scary too, because if you're on McDarby's side, it's like, man, I could maybe die this turn from like some Flesh Blood Gore Clan Rampager nonsense. And if you're on John's side, it's like, I could probably die next turn.
Yep.
Because I don't know what's coming from his hand to the top of his deck. He hasn't really done anything in either game besides cast the Blood Baron and some mana acceleration.
Both players definitely with a lot to sweat out this turn and next.
Well, there's a Stomping Ground that's untapped. So what's the big finish? I think I see a Chandra hanging out over there too.
David flashing a hand, although it doesn't actually look like David has a lot of action going on in that hand.
I want to know that top card. That's all I care about. Mutavault getting fired up. Yeah, everybody coming to red zone. This feels like a Gore Clan Rampager. Now, what happens if he doesn't block? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Xaxes. That's what happens.
5, 10, 12. Yep, this is exact lethal if David does not block.
I think he's priced in, my friends.
Well, he certainly is blocking a Mutavault no matter. It's either Mutavault or Pelucranos, right, is the block here?
Those are the options.
If he doesn't buy it, then Mutavault's a freebie, and if he does, then Pelucranos makes him use the Rampager this turn.
All right, well, we'll step in front of the old Mutavault here. See if there is a Rampager coming. 5. Okay, so if he has Flesh Blood, it's not over. Yep, this is a Rampage. This is a good draw. So after we add all of this up here,
Should knock David down to 3 if it was exact lethal, and the Caryatid absorbed 3.
quick untap, quick draw, detention sphere. How does that weigh into things?
I mean, David can actually get some more blockers out there and then use Axebane Guardian to make mana for detention sphere.
He's got 2 spheres in his hand. He probably wants to cast them both. So McDarby kind of shrugging his shoulders here, trying to figure out what to do. He's in a world of trouble right now, though. And again, luckily for him, he didn't reveal a card like Detention Sphere in the last game, so you can't expect Destructive Revelry to be hanging out over here. Detention Sphere going to take care of that. D-Sphere going to take care of that. Pass. Elvish Mystic, Mutavault versus Sylvan Caryatid.
I believe we have a
A dragon. We do have a dragon. That is going to do it. So John Pazel with green-red monsters. Going to take down David McDarby in his innovative 5-color ramp deck. 2 games to 0 in pretty decisive fashion here.
Yeah, David never really got to any of his haymakers, especially Angel's Serenity. So
Yeah, and that's the big one.
otherwise, the green-red monsters list is pretty efficient and can kill very quickly uncontested. And David spent too many turns not contesting anything.
Yeah.
So
I mean, this is a streamlined kind of killing machine in green-red monsters. Again, we saw Brian Brunduin make top 4 of it last weekend in Indianapolis. Van Meter starting 6-1. Dan Cato making top 4 as well. And then, surprise, surprise, Brian Kibler got his hands on the deck. Wrote an article about this as well. And I mean, some of the changes that he would make. You can check that out on the premium side of Star City Games. Went up yesterday for you guys.